Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? Yo soy Janfres. En este canal comparto todo lo que sé sobre ilustración y concept art. Pero también tengo la gran suerte de recibir invitados increíbles de clase mundial. En este caso, recibo para ti Alison Mann. Seguramente su nombre no te suena porque no es artista directamente. Es de estas personas que trabajan del lado de producción, estas personas que nos reclutan, que nos dan chance, que nos dan nuestros trabajos. Pero para que la ubiques nada más te diré un poco de los estudios donde ha trabajado. Disney, Paramount Pictures, Illumination, o sea que estamos hablando de películas como Wreck-It Ralph, La princesa y el sapo, Mi villano favorito, Cigüeñas, en fin, ha participado al reclutamiento de los mejores artistas del mundo. Y ahora funge como vicepresidenta creativa de Sony. ¿Qué demonios significa esto? Pues no lo sabía y ella me lo explicó. Básicamente ella tiene que ver con todos los proyectos de Sony Animation. O sea que ella participa en las conversaciones para decidir si tal o tal película se van a hacer, si tal o tal series de tele se van a hacer. Entonces está en el corazón, en el centro de las decisiones de la animación mundial. Imagínense todo lo que podemos aprender de alguien como ella. Y además es una persona increíble, es un súper ser humano, así que aproveché para hacerle un montón de preguntas, de las cuales, ¿cómo ve el futuro de la industria? ¿Qué tan abiertos están los grandes estudios hoy con todo lo que está sucediendo para contratar extranjeros como freelance? Pero también quería hablar de un tema muy sensible con ella, que es el dinero. ¿Cómo negociar un buen sueldo? Ella ha entrevistado y reclutado centenas, si no miles de personas. Como lo verán en el video, me compartió algunos tips para poder conseguir mejores acuerdos con los estudios y sobre todo definir un sueldo justo para cada artista. Pero también nos habla de Brick, un proyecto que cofundió y que está ahorita muy activo para brindar más diversidad en las industrias creativas. Mucha información, muchos tips de una de las personas mejor ubicadas para informarnos y ayudarnos a crecer como artista. Pero antes de dejarles con Alison, tengo dos maravillosas noticias que compartirles. La primera, ya son más de 150 inscritos e inscritas en mi carrera de arte conceptual e ilustración en Patreon. Y eso se lo debo exclusivamente a ustedes, caray.
No funciona si agradecido,
No pueden saber cuán agradecido estoy de que me están siguiendo en esta nueva aventura. Estoy seguro que va a estar increíble. Ya tengo todo el material preparado. Va a iniciar muy pronto, a principios de enero. Todos los que no están inscritos o inscritas aún, está el link en la descripción del video. Allá los espero. La segunda, voy a empezar a colaborar con uno de los blogs más influyentes en habla hispana. Se llama No Todo Animación. Juntos vamos a estar creando contenido. Voy a escribir posts ahí directamente en su blog sobre arte, ilustración, animación, etc. Me emociona mucho esta colaboración porque los sigo desde hace rato y me encanta su material. La verdad, tienen recursos, tutoriales gratuitos, bolsa de empleo. E incluso hace poco abrieron una tienda donde pueden encontrar muchas promociones. Échenle un ojo, van a ver que no se van a decepcionar. Bueno, finalmente los dejo con Alison Mann y les mando de una vez un fuerte abrazo.
I'm super excited for the future of animation.
Yeah.
I feel very positive about it. I feel that the audience is jonesing for more stories and of different visual styles, different types of narratives. So I think as an industry, I think now is a fantastic time to get into it. And if you want to be creator, I think it's a great time to become to push yourself and your voice, to showcase your work and put yourself out there. And whether it's the independent scene or the mainstream, I think it's a really exciting time. So I think there's going to be more global unity and opportunity for people because of different streaming devices. And I think the trend is moving in a positive direction.
Do you hire Latin American people? We're talking about freelance, but if I'm Mexican, if I'm really good at what I do, if I meet the needs of the project you're currently working on, do I have a chance to enter your studio? Or is it harder just because I'm from Latin America?
I think everybody has an opportunity. The industry is becoming smaller, and I think the ability to work with people from all around the world in a more global perspective is becoming more ideal. So
Why is that so? Sorry.
Because I think because of leaning into power of perspective and what different people's perspective is from different parts of the world, I think can help elevate a project. And I think that tends to be the philosophy for most of the industry at this point. I believe in manifesting your own fate. Like, I believe it's up to you to drive your own career and set your own goals and not wait for people to validate. And so, but if there's like certain goals that people want to like obtain, then it's up to them to be as observant as possible when it comes to. So like each studio kind of has a brand, and their brand is looking for something very specific. So you can't have the expectation of staying in like your style if you want to work at a specific big studio. You have to cater. I believe in the power of perspective and then the power of creative perspective. And I personally look for people that build stories or build up their portfolio from personal experience. Like they really, like what they bring to the table is their perspective, that it's their voice. To me, that's what I look for, because I want that influence. Like there's the philosophy that I kind of live by when engaging in talent is, if I'm going to hire that artist, it's because of their voice. It's not because I want them to fit in a certain type of bucket. Like I want to see what their perspective is and how they are going to make an impact on that particular project and how they're going to influence the visual language of that project. I want to hear that voice. I want to see that voice. So to me, that's what I think is most important, is like figuring out what your creative voice is and how that's going to support a project. For example, like if I read a script, and so in the script they describe a character a certain way, I look for designers that can then bring that character to life. And so so I look for people that have the shape language and the design sensibility that will fit. And then that coupled with what the director is looking for, then I kind of search for people that kind of fit within that world. And so I think it's very similar to casting actors in that respect. It's like you kind of try on a lot of different people, especially in the development phase. Is like you might hire a handful of designers to take a crack at designing a character, and just to see like what their interpretation is. But when I personally launch an artist, I don't give them like animated reference. Like I might give them live action reference, because what I want to lean into is their aesthetic and their design sensibility. I'm not interested in them trying to create a style that has already existed within this industry.
Where is the best place you can be spotted on and get the attention from the studio, showcasing your work?
To reach the studios, I think it's just having a strong social media platform and being consistent about posting your work, and also being able to curate your work of the best of your pieces, and not just showcasing anything that you are producing. But I think like being really involved in the creative community, whether that's Insta stories or like following different like Inktobers where you really, or sketch dailies, like any of those where you're investing and becoming part of an artist community. Those that are looking for talent are also on those platforms looking at that talent and seeing who's very active. So I think the more active participation that you play and more visibility you can give yourself and more connections, because I think sometimes it's hard to feel like you can make those connections when you're freelance and you're sitting at home. So you have to like double down. Like if this is what you want to do, like you want to be a freelance artist, then you just have to really put in the effort to build up your community and your tribe of people. And then also when we're allowed to do these things again, but go to like different networking events in person and meet with studio leads and representatives and just get to know people just like you would want to if you were dating. But I think there's a lot of different platforms too. So you have Instagram, you have Behance, you have Coreflow, like there's ArtStation. So like get onto all these different platforms. The one thing I'll have to say though is be consistent with how you again market yourself within these platforms.
If it would be only digitally, what's the best place or the best way to reach out to the people you would reach out normally on festivals or meetings or things like that?
In recruiting terms, there's 3 buckets. There's active people, so they're the people that apply to job boards. There's passive people that are not looking for jobs, but we go and search for those humans. And then there's referrals. So be in those 3 buckets as somebody who's looking for a job. Actively apply for jobs that are interesting. Network with individuals you haven't met before. I do a lot of just reaching out on Instagram or Behance, or like I make connections all the time. I make it a purpose to reach out to at least 3 individuals a week of artists I've never met before, just to build up my own network of humans. So do the same thing. There's nothing that stops you. So if you're like, hey, I want to get to know Alison, then hit me up. Like, I am happy to talk. If there's something that you want to know, like, people love to talk about themselves, make them talk about themselves. And then third is like, as you build up your tribe and your community, they will help you be you'll get referred to jobs, and then you eventually will refer your network to opportunities as well if you get too busy to take on that freelance gig. So build up your tribe. So those are the 3 buckets I would kind of navigate in. I feel like people feel like a lot of the ownership of salary comes down to the employer. When in actuality, I think has to be a balance between that and people really stating what they're worth and holding their ground. That set with the expectations of what the production budget is, and asking smart questions during the interview process to get those answered so that you don't feel like you're being taken advantage of. It's up to the individual then to come up with what they feel their worth is. It's a very uncomfortable conversation. And as an individual who has negotiated salaries a lot in my lifetime, I really try to be as clear and as upfront and as supportive as possible for an individual when negotiating a salary. So, and I also recognize when somebody is undervaluing themselves. And so I really try to coach them through that if that is the case. There's a lot of factors that goes into with a negotiation. There is a duration of the project. So sometimes if the duration is shorter, then the project could potentially pay you more because it's a shorter amount of time. If it's a longer position, then sometimes the they need to be able to manage that budget. And so the budget for a longer term position might yield a lower rate. So I think there's times where it's like, what is my rate for different scenarios versus like, there's a freelance rate, there's an in-house rate, there's a short-term rate, there's a long-term rate. So to me, it's like figuring out your value with all those different scenarios. I think there's so many factors besides an hourly rate that go into your overall compensation, I would say. And that's also something to look at, is like, what is the full comp package versus just an hourly salary? Yeah. So is there bonuses involved? What does the vacation policy look like if it's a long-term job? Like, what are the holidays? So all of those are always factored into a rate that a studio or project is given.
I think many people feel uncomfortable with money-related questions when they go to the interview, because they feel because they feel they're going to give a bad image of their self if they go and be too specific about their questions. Okay, so how much do you give me? How many holidays do you have? Can you go really, in the nitty-gritties of everything? I think there is a bit of a complex from people about being so specific. From your standpoint, which is the person in the other side of the desk, have you already felt this? Like, wow, this artist is just interested in money or what? Or do you think it's just an illusion that we create for ourselves?
I think interviewing is like dating. I actually have a blog called How to Date Your Boss, which was like when I was a recruiter, like a recruiter's guide to finding the career of your dreams. And so I often find that, like, if you kind of correlate dating and interviewing, it kind of removes all the uncomfortableness, even though I think dating can be uncomfortable, although it's been a really long time, so I don't really remember. But you have a kind of a clear set. Like, sometimes you're exploring different types of people and trying to figure out what you're looking for in a life mate, if that is your goal. But I think everybody has different dating goals. I think everybody has different types of career goals. And then on the opposite side, when you're dating somebody, like, that person has different. So it's like, you're trying to figure out like where that connection lies. And so I think before, to your point, I think before diving into the technical of like the how much, like what the rate is, the benefits, the bonuses, like all that stuff, just like you probably wouldn't necessarily dive into that on a first date of like, how many kids do you want? Like, when do you want to get married? Like, you want to like kind of just dip your toe in the water and test it a little bit. It's the same with like interviewing. So I think when I'm interviewing somebody, and this is kind of going back to what we were talking about originally, is I look for somebody that is curious, that is really invested in their craft. I want to hear about like what makes them tick as an artist, what inspires them, because money is one component of somebody being happy in a job or in their career, but it's not what really fulfills them. It's the project that they're going to be working on. How does that project help them evolve as an artist? Like, who's the talent that's on that project that they are going to be able to learn from? Yes, money is important, and we can't pay our rent and bills without it, but don't negate the other factors in looking for a job as well. So once you get past and you're like, yes, this is a job for me, because you have ownership of your career and where you want to go. It's not just up for somebody else to say, this is like, we're going to hire you. Like, you have ownership on that as well. So once that becomes clear, then you can kind of go dive into, if there's interest on both sides and you guys start talking money, just have very clear expectations of what your wants are. And then if they're unable to meet it, then you ask the questions of, are there raises available? Are like, if I take this job, like, am I going to be able to see movement? What is your, you know, like, whether that's within career, if you want to be more of a leader in a leadership position or a higher salary, like ask them kind of what that looks like within their production, and if there are those types of opportunities. So I think coming up with a set of questions ahead of time, and when I interview, I always come up with a list of questions that I feel I want to know about that company and how it's structured and how they manage people, for me to then decide if that's a company or a job that I want to take. Well, I think we were talking earlier about coming up with your own goals and priorities, and I think it's really connecting to yourself about what makes you tick as an artist, what inspires you as an artist, like what are things that you, like what type of projects do you want to work on, and how does that fit into the style that you have formed as a creative. I think oftentimes we have certain goals because we feel like we need to have those goals. Mm-hmm. Back to like the dating, it's like people assume that if you date, you want to get married, but not everybody wants to get married. I think that can be seen as like the same as going after maybe the big studios in your career. It's because that's what you've been brought up to believe is the epitome of success. So I think defining what success means to you, I think what type of projects, again, inspire you, and make out that list. Then after you kind of figure out like and identify what inspires you, what you think your style is aesthetically, and how that might fit into these companies that you've identified, then it comes down to observation. Does my portfolio match what is going on within that studio? Like as you build up your portfolio, you're building up your brand, your aesthetic. People get to know you for what you're bringing to the table. I don't necessarily believe in a jack of all trades as a master of observation. I think you need to be observant of your style and the style that is going on within that particular studio to be able to market yourself for that particular role. So if it's something that you want to achieve, then you might need to tweak your style a bit in order to get the position that you want. I also think social media plays a big part. I think people need to utilize their platforms. So if you have an Instagram account, really only using your Instagram for your art. And if you want something personal, then do personal, but really start figuring out yourself as your brand. What is your brand? How do you want to market yourself? And really identify. You don't, at the end of the day, when people are hiring individuals, they don't want to identify that for the individual. They want the individual, they want the artist or whatever position you're going after to be like, this is what I want. This is what I bring to the table. So I always say it's not my job to define or decide your career path. I always say if you're stuck on an island on your own and you had to pick one thing, what would that be? And that doesn't mean you have to dismiss other things that you're interested or you want to stay curious in, but you should be able to master one specific area in order to really help people navigate what your style and what you can bring to the table as a talent.
Do you think this is compatible with an artist having 2 or 3 styles and just showing them up whenever it fits the project? What I mean by that is, do you think an artist who wants to have a bit more broader style or exploration should have several studios so that he can be a different persona when he goes to a studio and to another one? Or do you think you should really go deep in this and have your style and be 100% about your style?
So if you're aiming for, say, a studio that does a lot of TV, and they do a lot of different types of TV, the benefit of doing more than one style is that you can then roll from one project to the next. But in actuality, when you're going for a job, you're really going for that one production.
Yes.
And oftentimes you're hired for that because your style, they think, aesthetically matches the project that you're going for. And then they're also looking for people that can potentially help elevate the project or give a different perspective. But it all also depends on the discipline you're going for. I think like for visual development, you're helping define a look. That's one thing. Storyboarding, like, again, that is, you need to be able to showcase different types of storytelling there, like whether it's comedy or drama or action. Like, you really need to be able to showcase that if you want all those different types of jobs. But I think it's not a one fit answer because it really is individualized of that individual's goals. So I say start more specific, come up with like the 1 to 3 goals that you have, aim for whether they're projects or studios that you want to, and really focus your energy and time on building up a portfolio that can get you into those opportunities. Don't take rejection or think of it as rejection as face value. It's your career to own, so own it. Like, nobody can define that for you. You are seriously the only person. And again, those are the barriers that we put up for ourselves. And this is what we tell ourselves to validate. But we drive that. So like, if there's something I want in my career, I let it be known. I'm like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to achieve. The only person that can stop that is me. And also if people are unaware, then they can't help me. So you have to be open to sharing your aspirations, your goals, and not hiding behind that fear of failure. I think that we all are so comfortably, do. So I just encourage people just to own it.
Yeah, so you're the original founder of Brick. Could you just sum it up, the purpose of it, the whys of it, and the method you're trying to create?
So Brick is about how do we create access points for women and underrepresented groups that want to be creative leaders in the entertainment, tech, and media fields.
This is perfect pitch.
And we have 2 sides of Brick, one that focuses on high school, because I am in the belief that we need to start earlier in the recruiting process and influencing of not just of getting people to understand what these career paths are from a student perspective, but also making bringing the families along for the conversation as well. So it's educating students and families about these sorts of opportunities. I don't think there's enough of those conversations happening, especially in underserved communities. So we're making it our mission to kind of foster those conversations. The second is working and figuring out how we can create more access points for professionals that want to be in those creative leadership roles. And so that's whether that's during our summits, which we had 2 so far, which are one-day summits, and we really try to focus on the solve versus kind of a passive summit. So everybody that comes to participate comes there with the idea that they're going to work for the whole day and help be part of the solution, versus coming and watching a group of panelists talk about some ideas, feeling kind of inspired, and then walking away. So we are in the impression that it's not just the job of the studios or the industry to make the change, but no matter where you're at in your career, that you are part of the solve, that you are part of the solution, that you are championing people and their voices, that you are working to elevate emerging talent and individuals that might not have had these opportunities, that we're working on solutions together that bridge the gaps between education and art schools and being able to afford going into this career path, because that is a huge barrier. So we're working on breaking down those barriers, but doing it as a collective and not just focusing on animation, but again, all these fields, because all these different fields and sectors of the industry are talking about this. So that's kind of what Brick does.
I was just wondering if you consider that Latin American people in the US were considered a little represented or underrepresented population, and what would Jorge have to say about this?
I can't remember exactly what Jorge said. I don't want to misquote.
Okay.
Yes, I do feel like we are lacking representation across everything right now. And that's what I think is most important, is to make sure that we start bringing out that balance. But yes, there is lack of representation.
There is.
Yeah.
Do you think the BRIC philosophy, so the 4 points the logo mentions, can be applied to any place, or is it really USA industry specific?
Any place. It's all of our responsibility on a global standpoint to bring equal representation for all these positions.
And you think these, sorry.
And it takes a real effort. It's not just putting it on social media and being a social media warrior, justice warrior, and like stating the thing. It's like you have to be involved. You have to get involved with organizations or mentorships, whatever it is. Like if you want to see that change, you can't just be complacent and say that you don't like it and just post stuff about it. It's like you have to get involved. The industry won't change and shift if we aren't all in it together. So elevate each other, mentor each other. We talk about that referral bucket, like be a referral for somebody, be an advocate. Like we have to start championing each other for these opportunities and fighting for each other. And that's why also representation across leadership roles are so important, because we need individuals to be able to get these opportunities and people to champion to get those positions.